Well, welcome again, everyone. And for those of you who are new to us, just a little bit about who we are. We are a small nonprofit based here in Louisville, Kentucky, but we serve a national audience. You can read a little bit about us on this slide, but really the basics are that we seek to provide small groups with space to create community, to grow spiritually, and to equip those groups to seek justice. You can see the small group programs that we offer, the Just Faith series, which is on poverty and how to engage in helping to alleviate and stand in solidarity with those who are experiencing poverty in our local communities. We have a Catholic a version that is through a Catholic lens, and a version that is through an ecumenical lens. We have our racial justice series. There are 3 programs with that. Each of them are 8 weeks. We have some programs for youth on various topics. We have our program that we'll discuss today that's called Just Engagement, that's on training small groups for advocacy, grassroots advocacy and organizing. We have Just Engaging Spirituality, which is on well, obviously spirituality, but restoring folks and connecting them and grounding them for the work of justice. We have a program on hunger and food insecurity, one on faith and immigration justice. We have one on nonviolence, and our brand new eco-justice series. And we actually just released our first program in this series a couple weeks ago. So that's just a little bit about us. And so about this program that we'll focus on today. So Just Engagement, as it says here, it equips small groups for advocacy and grassroots organizing, no matter what issue you decide to address. So regardless of whether you're passionate about immigration issues, about racial justice, about alleviating poverty, this program really seeks to give you the tools that you need to engage in this work. And Leela will talk a little bit more about this here in a few minutes, but for those of you who are new to us, our programs are for small groups of 8 to 12 or 8 to 15, depending on if you're doing virtual meetings or in person, and anyone can facilitate them. We give you all the resources that you need to be able to facilitate, regardless of whether you're clergy, regardless of whether you have experience facilitating groups like this. But Just Engagement that we'll talk about today, it prepares participants to change laws and systems that trap people in poverty, desecrate God's creation, and perpetuate injustice. And so this program trains groups to faithfully, and we hope effectively, create a more just and peaceful world. So I'm just going to walk you through the program. There are 8 sessions, and then in addition, there's an opportunity to engage in an immersion experience in your local community and an optional retreat. So I'm just going to walk you through the program and tell you a little bit about each session. So this first session is the introduction to one another and also to the topic of advocacy. So there's a reflection on biblical justice and what that means, and what that might look like, so that folks can begin to envision what biblical justice looks like in our world, so they can know where to begin and what our ultimate goal is. Session 2 is introducing people to the topic of advocacy. So it'll look at different forms of faith-rooted advocacy, different practical ways that you can get involved in different forms in which advocacy takes place. And so this will help your group members to identify where they feel called to use their gifts and talents. And of course, they'll continue to discern that throughout the program. And then between sessions 2 and 3, after folks have begun to get to know each other, there's an option for a one-day retreat. So usually this takes place between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., about that time frame, but you could of course adjust that according to your schedule. You can also shorten it if you want to. And this just gives time for additional community building, because kind of some of the hope is that the group will engage in advocacy together. So it's helpful to really form those bonds early on and create real and lasting friendships. And a retreat is a great way to begin to do that. And it also gives some opportunity for more reflection and learning around the topic of advocacy and organizing. So then in session three is on social movements and the power to affect change. And so during this session, folks will look at different social movements that like historically and today. And so they'll also look at the strategies that these movements use that are successful, so that they can adopt those strategies and use those models and take them as their own. One of the strategies that is heavily discussed, of course, is solidarity, and other strategies include, just so you have an idea, storytelling, mobilizing people to vote, and harnessing creating collective power to change laws and systems. Session 4 is on power mapping. So that during this session, folks will engage in an exercise to identify who has power to create change around an issue, and then come up with ways to creatively influence that power. So this gives you some practical tools to do that. Session 5, you have an opportunity to hear from a guest speaker, and then there will also be time to reflect on biblical justice. And this is something that biblical justice was something that we started with in session 1. And so this will take an even deeper dive into some of the strategies and priorities and messages of biblical figures, such as the psalmist, the prophets, and Jesus, of course. And then during the first half of this session, you will hear from a guest speaker from your local community. And so that's up to the facilitator and the group to find someone from your community. Or, I mean, with Zoom these days, you can really talk to just about anyone, which it's pretty amazing. But to bring in someone involved in organizing and advocacy to learn from them and learn from their techniques and models. And we really hope that this will be an opportunity to help participants plug into this work and to think even more creatively about how to strategize and create change. Session 6 is the role of faith leaders and faith communities in creating social change. And so this session is really based around Walter Brueggemann's book, The Prophetic Imagination. Some of you may have encountered that book before. It's super well known. It inspired, in this book, you might know, has inspired faith-based organizing movements and influence strategies, and is studied in seminaries. And so this book so this session really revolves around some of the key messages that comes from that. And so through a small group activity, participants will learn tools for changing systems and structures based on the witness of the prophets. And so, and this is really, I think is a really practical thing. Sometimes we like to spiritualize our faith, but the prophets offer us some really important tools for creating real change in our world today. And then we have the immersion experience. And so this is an opportunity, again, this is something that the facilitator and your group will set up together. And you have the opportunity to visit an advocacy group or some people doing grassroots organizing in your local community or community nearby, or even if you're meeting virtually, to have somebody video conference in. If you want to do that, we have some other options if you're doing virtual, if you're doing this group virtually. But again, this is an opportunity to hear from folks who are already involved in this work, so that your group can really get plugged in, and also so that they can learn some models for work that is already happening. Session 7, this is really important, self-care for the social justice advocate. So this walks participants through what to do when inevitably in this work, we will encounter frustration, stress, anger. That is natural and normal, and we need to know from the beginning how to deal with that so we don't get burnt out. And so this session will give folks some ideas for spiritual practices and walk them through some basic psychology, so that they can really learn to be mindful of what they're thinking and feeling, and throughout this work that can be really tough sometimes. So this session attempts to give folks some tools for how to deal with that. And then session 8, during the final session, this is devoted to discerning and planning for making concrete plans for action steps action steps that you will take as an individual, and also action steps that you can take as a small group. So you'll take what you've learned, identify your own gifts and skills, and the needs of the world, and to discern how to move forward. And so here we just have some other components that are part of really all of our programs. Some of our programs have retreats, some of them don't. But other than that, these are part of all of our programs. Our sessions begin and end with prayer. And there's spiritual practices that participants will try out throughout the week between sessions. All of our programs are centered on holy conversation. And so I think that we have programs that discuss some pretty controversial issues, and I think it's just really amazing that folks are able to come together with very diverse viewpoints and backgrounds, and they're able to engage in conversation around these tough issues. And so session 1 gives folks the tools that they need to be able to do that. And so practicing that in their group, I think also helps people practice for doing that in the real world outside of their group as well. Of course, there's practical tools for organizing and advocacy. As I talked about earlier, there's the immersion experience and the guest speaker that will help folks get plugged in and introduce them to new models and help them to think creatively about grassroots organizing and advocacy. And then there's the optional retreat that is a one-day retreat between sessions 2 and 3. So some resources used in this program are Faith-Rooted Organizing is one book. The other book is Live Justly. Throughout, there are articles that folks will read between the sessions, and videos are incorporated, like YouTube videos are incorporated, sometimes in the sessions and sometimes between sessions. Those are some of the resources that we use. We do have a bookstore at Just Faith Ministries where we get the books directly from the publishers, and our prices, we try to stay competitive with Amazon prices, but we're a small nonprofit and it's one way that we sustain ourselves. So we always try to promote getting books from our bookstore for the group. Just some feedback that we've gotten. I heard a story recently about one group who, for their immersion experience, they went to go visit a local business that manufactures solar panels. And so this group was really inspired by their immersion experience, and they also felt like a little bit more equipped to engage in this work because of what they were studying and just engagement. And so they volunteered to really help make these solar panels available to a low-income community or low-income households, so that this would not only help to lower their electricity bills, but to help stop climate change as well. That's a little bit about the program, and I think now I'm just going to turn it back over to Leela for a little bit more information about the program logistics.
Great, thank you, Kristen. So here I've thrown up just a few things about what to expect. So when you are looking at a Just Faith Ministries program, you can do our programs both virtual and in person. So in light of COVID, many groups around the country are using Just Engagement and all of our other programs virtually over Zoom or another video conferencing platform. And when you're doing our programs virtually, the content is the same. So we have not changed the main content, but there are certain adaptations that are necessary to be done to make it an effective process virtually. As it exists right now for the Just Engagement program, we have a support document that goes along with the program outlining any necessary changes to the program for a virtual platform. But over the next several months, we are working to make a fully virtual version of the Just Engagement program along with our other programs. So in the coming months, when a person or a group goes to purchase the Just Engagement program, they can either do it in the virtual or in-person format. In the meantime, it can still be done virtually, but it has not been completely rewritten. As Kristen outlined, the programs are 8 sessions, plus there's that optional retreat and an immersion experience. So that's just helpful to keep in mind when planning that there's actually 10 gathering times, 8 of those typical sessions, plus the retreat and the immersion experience. These programs are designed for small groups. Again, as Kristen said, for in-person between 8 to 15, but virtually we really encourage groups to limit their size to about 12. It just allows for greater connectivity. And for our virtual groups who are meeting potentially for just 2 hours instead of 2.5 hours, it allows for more sharing time per individual if there's a smaller group. And to that end, my next point of 2 or 2.5 hour long sessions, we have written all of our in-person programs to be 2.5 hours in length, but we've learned that for some virtual groups, that time is just a little too long. And so in our virtual rewrites, we are rewriting these programs at 2 hours in length for the virtual format. And then again, also, as Kristen mentioned, we have weekly assignments. So those texts that are used in the books, as well as articles and videos, there are weekly assignments that usually end up being around 30 to 45 minutes of time commitment to read and process throughout the week, so that you're prepared for that time when you meet together. And here's a quick overview of what a session might look like. Every session is slightly different, but this is what a typical session outline looks like. So you have this opening welcome, prayer, and meditation. Usually there's a video or an article that you're having conversation around. There's a break written into the program, as well as time for announcements, then discussion about the reading. So you really dive into what was read for that weekly assignment and get to learn from one another and what each group member is learning. And then finally, closing prayer. And how to get started. So I just wanted to outline a few logistics. When you're going to register a small group, you do that through our website, which I've listed right there, justfaith.org. And you can sign up, pay the registration fee, and begin the process for your small group. The Just Engagement program is $175 for the entire group. More often than not, that registration fee is paid by a church or a parish, or is paid through all the participants donating to cover that total sum of money. And that's a one-time fee that then gives the group access to that program for an entire year. And let's say there's a church that buys the program in May of 2021. That means they will then have access to that program for an entire year and can use that program with as many small groups within their church community for that year. The only additional cost is the cost of the books. So that's the only added fee per participant. And I will add a little asterisk here to say that we are currently looking into changing our registration model. And that's not relevant for you all today. That will be a ways off before we shift how we do our registration, but that is coming probably to the end of next year. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So if you decide to come back in a year from now to register for a program, it might look a little different. Again, once you've registered for the program, you immediately get access to the content, to all the facilitators' content, the participant content through an online account, and you can begin planning. Part of that planning is deciding whether you want to do it in person or virtually. Also, part of that planning is identifying who's going to facilitate the groups and really exploring the role of the facilitator. We have all the information that facilitators need to facilitate the program effectively. We've given complete session outlines, tips and suggestions, and training throughout the program. So facilitators really are ready to go once they get access to that content. But as I said at the very beginning, a huge part of my role at Just Faith Ministries is to support facilitators one-on-one. So as questions arise or concerns come up, I'm here to help facilitators in that role. And then the last thing to do is to pick a date, start promoting, and get ready to get started. And on our website, when you're on a given program page, like Just Engagement program page, you'll see a box that says promotional kit. And we have created an array of promotional materials, from social media posts to bulletin announcements to email texts, that can be used to promote and recruit participants for a program. And that's for free, available to be downloaded on our website. So that is the end of the PowerPoint. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're going to now open up for a time of Q&A. So if you have any questions, we invite you to send those through the chat, and Kristen and I will answer those. If you have a hard time navigating the chat and would prefer to unmute yourself, you're welcome to, but it just helps us more easily go through the questions if you do send those through the chat. So we'll give you all a minute to think up any questions you might have and then begin to answer them. Okay, so someone is asking about if there is a way for them to know if there's already a small group in their community, and that is a great question. Yes and no. So if you are interested in getting connected with a church or an organization in your area who's doing Just Engagement or another one of your programs, you can send me an email and I'd be happy to look it up and get you connected. So my email is my first name that appears right below my face at justfaith.org. And the reason I say no is that we currently don't facilitate small groups out of our national office, but we are working towards that. So within the next year, we're hoping to redo our website. And in that process, we will be able to connect folks and get small groups started through our website. So Nancy could come and go to the program finder and put in her location, her program interest, and then any available programs would come up. So in the future, we will have that automated process, but for now, I can help you individually.
I got a question here about, so today's session is an introduction to the program. It's just telling you what it's about. This is not part of the program itself, but it's just telling you what the program is. And I also got a question earlier about advocacy. And I just want to say that there's both advocacy, grassroots organizing and advocacy components. One important thing that I forgot to mention is that one of our key partners is Bread for the World, and they are experts in this issue. And so we've used several of their resources. And so, for example, one thing that you'll do with advocacy is for your spiritual practice, you will write a letter to a congressional representative on a certain issue that you feel very passionate about. So you'll kind of learn how to go about doing that. And you'll have the tools to Bread for the World, through Bread for the World, we give you the tools to be able to do that. And then your group will pray over the letters together.
I have a question here about whether or not it's important for someone to get the parish or church leaders' consent before starting a small group. So if you're doing a small group within your faith community, then we definitely encourage you to make it known to the whole community, to get buy-in from leadership within your community. But all of the small groups do not have to be done within the confines of a church or led by clergy members. So there are small groups that are groups of friends or just a small group that somehow is connected outside of a faith community who are choosing to do the program on their own. So that is a possibility. And all it takes to start a small group is having, really, you could start it with 6 folks, but 8 folks and who are willing to do the process together. And then the next question I have, Kristen, if you want to answer this, someone's asking if the program is currently available or if it's still in the process of being created.
Oh, good question. It is, yes, currently available. It is out and ready to go.
And the only thing I'll add to that, which may have caused the confusion, so hopefully this will clarify and not add more confusion, is that we are in the process of writing the fully virtual version, but it can be done in its current form right now virtually, and groups are using it virtually right now. But in a few months, we will have that fully virtual version done, which will just make the process of facilitating a little easier, but it can be done tomorrow. It is being done today. Okay, I've got a question, Kristen. I'll let you take a go at this first. This individual is asking about what tools and resources are offered through Just Faith Ministries that help small groups stay engaged after the program. So for example, are there specific campaigns that Just Faith Ministries leads throughout the year that members could become a part of?
That's a great question. Well, one thing that we have is our Just Faith network. And so it's free right now and anyone can join it, whether you are a program graduate or you are completely new to us. And so what you do is you go to our website, and I will send you the link here in a second. And you sign up and you get a free resource every week. Right now it's every week. And it is, there's prayer, reflection, and there is dialogue around, a lot of times it's around a current event related to justice. Some other times it's more spiritually focused, helping to kind of sustain people for advocacy and organizing and justice efforts. We see really our role to equip people to work for justice. And so through our programs, folks will be exposed to organizations that we work with, like Bread for the World and World Renew, and so they'll be exposed to people engaged in the work of whatever program they are using. At the same time, they'll also be exposed to work going on in their local community through the immersion process and the guest speaker, and chances are people in your group are already engaged in some work as well. And so we see our role to equip people to get involved in those efforts that are going on. So we're really the education and the spiritual preparation, and giving people the practical tools to get involved. So we educate and equip people to do that work. We don't necessarily have things that we are actively, we don't have like campaigns or anything that we do. We do the equipping part of that, if that makes any sense.
Kristen, the only thing I'll add to that is that we do strongly encourage groups to stay connected and to, especially in the case of this program that is really working towards equipping a small group to go out and engage together, that we encourage the Just Faith Ministry small groups, no matter what program they're completing, to stay connected, to hold one another accountable to the things that were learned and the action steps that were discerned, so that if Carolyn and I are in a small group together and I've said in the discernment process that I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z over the course of this next year because I feel called by God to do that, that our hope would be the small groups would be a source of encouragement and accountability for one another. But as an organization, we do not, require that they stay connected. We do not have that mandated or laid out. We just encourage folks to do that. And oftentimes, because of the bond that was connected over the course of those 10 weeks, groups are really willing and interested in staying connected and to doing the work together. Okay, someone just asked about online support for every facilitator who's running one of our groups. Great question. So we have Zoom. So something that's new to a lot of us over the last 10 months is the reality of Zoom, and facilitating one of our programs over Zoom does take some technological know-how. So we have created a variety of Zoom training videos that are available to all facilitators. They're linked in the facilitator documents in their account and also on our YouTube channel. So that's one source of training that's available. We also have a variety of support documents that are available to facilitators upon registration. And in those documents is suggestions, trainings, outlines that really take someone from, I know nothing about this program, to the first session where you're facilitating to the very end of the program, and walk you through every step of the way, answering any questions that you might have along the road. So that is the primary source of both training and support. Beyond that, I fill in gaps anywhere there's extra need. So most facilitators get the material and they're able to hit the ground running without the need of any additional support. But when and if there's someone who needs extra support, whether that's helping them learn how to use Zoom for the very first time or helping them navigate how to facilitate this one activity that's just particularly confusing to them, I am more than willing to spend as much time with them individually as needed. The only other thing I'll add to that is if you are in a church or a faith community that has multiple small groups doing the same program, I'm more than willing and will lead a facilitator training that's for that small group of facilitators. So Mary Ellen, if you're at a church, let's say that has 10 small groups that want to use this program, then I'd be happy to dedicate an hour, hour and a half to meet with all of those the facilitator team and work through any questions. Really, it's sort of at your request. I'm happy to help.
Oh, this is a good question. Do we run the program or you provide a written program the facilitator will use? It's the second one. We provide a written, we provide the facilitator materials that they need to facilitate the program in their own communities. And so we do not actually conduct the programs through our national office. We provide folks the materials that they need to conduct this program in their own communities. And I say, I want to say too, just as a side note, that we say local communities, but this can also be an opportunity to engage with folks from all over the country, folks, that you might be in community with who are long distance, especially given the time that we're in. You can do that through video conferencing, but we do provide folks material to do that themselves.
I have a question that I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to answer this correctly. So if I don't, feel free to shoot me it again. It's asking about whether or not it's required for folks to participate in all 8 sessions. So there is usually a conflict that comes up for at least a couple participants, if not a facilitator, along the 10 weeks. And so we encourage some flexibility. We know life is complicated and people get sick, especially in the world that we're in right now. And so having that flexibility is definitely helpful, because you don't want to keep someone from joining just because they have a work call one of the 10 weeks you're going to be meeting together. With that being said, if someone comes to you as a facilitator to the group and says, I want to participate, but I can only come to 3 sessions, that would really be, I think, a loss to that individual, because they would admit there'd be such a gap in the knowledge that they're missing, or the information that they're missing. And it's going to be harder for the group to feel as connected to that individual and feel like they can trust their presence. So a big part of our programs is creating a community of trust that respects one another, knows one another, that can learn from one another. And if you have a person who's kind of ping-ponging in and out, that can really disrupt that sense of small group and connection. So somewhere in between saying everyone has to come every meeting and you only need to come to half. And that's sort of up for the group to decide what those boundaries will be. The last thing I'll say to that is, if someone is going to miss, I would still encourage them to do the reading, to stay up to date on the content, so that when they come back the next week, they don't feel like they just missed a ton and they feel super behind.
I have a question here. Do you provide resources for speakers, or is the facilitator responsible to find such folks? And the same for the retreat. So for the guest speaker and the immersion experience, the group and the facilitator are responsible for finding their own guest speaker and opportunity for immersion. That said, we do provide suggestions on where you might find folks. And chances are, if the people in your group will have some ideas as well. If they are in this program, they are likely already sort of engaged in this issue. And so we also will have some suggestions for you as well. But you are responsible for finding an immersion experience, coordinating an immersion experience, given we have all the instructions for that. And the same with the guest speakers. We give you the instructions and ideas for where to find a guest speaker, but you are responsible for that. And some of the reason for this too is that folks are really likely to get involved on a local level when they know folks from their local community. And so the opportunity to connect with people who are already engaged in issues that people care about and are passionate about locally will increase the likelihood that they'll, versus, if we were to coordinate this and it was somebody very far away, engaging with somebody locally will increase the chances that folks will get involved. I also have a question. This is a great question. Can you give some concrete examples of what a group actually does? Advocacy is a vague term. Do groups go out into the community, or is this program about planning about how to go out into the community? This is the education piece. And I'll say, well, there's a little bit of both, actually. I'll revise that. There's a little bit of both. This is really this program seeks to equip people to do advocacy and organizing well. So there's some opportunities to get involved in advocacy and organizing. So for example, like I mentioned before, there are opportunities to write to your congressional representative, which a lot of folks will have never have done before. And there's opportunities through the immersion experience to get plugged in and to maybe go to an organizing meeting of a local organizing group. So there are opportunities to do that, but mainly in each session, folks will, be giving the tools and some education around how to do this work well.
For the role of the facilitator, sometimes that role will be taken on by one individual, but we recommend that you have at least 2 facilitators per small group. And the reason for that, well, there's a few reasons, but the first is practical. If something comes up in my life and I'm the facilitator and I can't be there last minute, the group can't meet because I'm not there. Whereas if there is a partner, a co-facilitator, they could carry on without me. The second reason is that we believe that everyone has different gifts and strengths and capabilities. And so when you have 2 folks who are working together, combining their strengths, supporting one another, that you're going to have a better facilitator team. And so on average, there's 2 folks who facilitate, sometimes 3. Every once in a while, an individual will want to do it alone, and we don't keep them from that. But our recommendation is about 2 facilitators. Any last questions? Not seeing anything else in my chat. I am about to type my email. I just typed my email into the chat. And again, it's just my first name. Kristen's email is kristen@justfaith.org. We try to keep it pretty simple. And if you have a question that comes up, sometimes you get off a meeting and then you remember that brilliant question you forgot. Shoot me an email. I'll answer it. If I can't answer it, I'll send it to Kristen and have her get back to you. And then the last question I'm seeing here is about signing up for our mailing list. So we do have a biweekly newsletter that is called Just News, and you can sign up for that on our website. It's clearly identified, and that's a great place to learn about events we're hosting. We do have bi-monthly guest speakers who come and talk about an area of expertise and then give action steps to our community. So that you learn about those events, new programs, anything else you'd want to know about what's going on with Just Faith Ministries. Okay, well, I think that might be it. Kristen, are you seeing anything on your end?
I think that is everything. I just want to say thanks again for being here. I know that if you're here, you really care about justice, and you care about seeking justice, and just know that we are in solidarity with you, regardless of whether you choose to use our programs as a tool. We're here with you and we're in solidarity. And I think that's it. Thanks again for taking the time out of your day.